You've probably heard of Elden Ring. You also probably know Sekiro, Bloodborne, and Dark Souls. Slightly more niche but still popular would be Armored Core. All these games are made by FromSoftware, so these guys clearly understand difficult, challenging RPGs. But FromSoftware didn't start with these big successful games. They've been going for quite a while now, and any article or video about them will always list their older games like Demon Souls, or the PlayStation 2 launch title Eternal Ring. I've actually covered Eternal Ring on this channel already. It's not bad. But what about FromSoftware's first ever game, the PlayStation 1 launch title Kingsfield, the very first RPG ever on that iconic console. Some would even say the first 3D RPG in the world. And yes, this does mean that FromSoftware had the first RPG on both the PlayStation 1 and the PlayStation 2, which is a rather impressive claim. I know the name Kingsfield because I've heard videos mention it and read articles where it's dropped as a bit of trivia. They always say, FromSoftware, the makers of Elden Ring, started with Kingsfield. But I'd never actually played Kingsfield myself. And saying a company made a game doesn't actually mean anything unless you're going to show design decisions that they've expanded on from that game, or lessons they've learned from mistakes they made in that game. I know FromSoftware made Kingsfield, but from a design point of view, I don't actually know what that means. So let's change that. Welcome, I'm Josh Strife-Hayes. I like FromSoftware games, so let's go back to where this all started. A simple PlayStation 1 RPG you can finish in under a day. Let's see if we can spot any of the signature FromSoftware design, like brutally unforgiving combat, obscure quests, lonely worlds, hidden rooms, creepy final bosses, or the Moonlight Greatsword. Let's analyze what it did well, critique what it did badly, and then answer the simple question. Kingsfield, was it actually any good? As usual, a massive thank you to all the supporters on Patreon and Twitch who keep the channel alive. You can support from only £1 a month. More information on how you can support at the end of the video. For now, let's begin. Specifically, let's begin with Kingsfield. Not, as I mistakenly did, Kingsfield. You see, the footage you're watching now, that's Kingsfield, not Kingsfield. Let me explain. Kingsfield is a PlayStation 1 RPG released exclusively in Japan in 1994. It's one of the earliest 3D RPGs, often cited as the earliest, and it doesn't have an official English translation. It sold well, so they made a sequel, but that sequel would be released in Japan, North America, and Europe, meaning the sequel would need to have an English translation, and the name of that sequel was Kingsfield. You can see the issue we're going to run into here. This game, despite being the second Kingsfield game, was only known as Kingsfield 2 in Japan. Everywhere else it was just called Kingsfield, because technically for those regions it was the first one they were able to play. But this naming convention had a domino effect when the series continued, because Kingsfield 3 in Japan was known as Kingsfield 2 everywhere else, and Kingsfield 4 in Japan was retitled to Kingsfield the Ancient City everywhere else. But it gets more confusing when, in 2006, the original Japanese Kingsfield 1 gets a full fan translation to English, and the translated game released titled Kingsfield, meaning the title Kingsfield now refers to the original 1994 Japanese version, the 1995 Kingsfield 2 sequel just called Kingsfield in Europe, and the translation of the original Kingsfield from Japanese to English. So nowadays, when you're discussing the series, it's easy to clarify exactly which game you're on about by saying the year of release. So this video is about the first game, the original 1994 Japanese Kingsfield 1, but I'll be playing the 2006 fan translation. And I'm glad that's all cleared up because, you know, it'd be embarrassing if I spent several hours playing the wrong Kingsfield for this review. Imagine how dumb you'd feel if you did that. This is why sequels need to use numbers. Just call it Kingsfield 1 and 2. So let's begin. The intro movie has us flying through a series of very angular grey stone corridors and the title Kingsfield in large letters with a stretched grey texture. We get a text scroll explaining the land of Verdite was overcome with evil, but a hero called the Dragon defeated it many years ago, then disappeared. A multi-floor dungeon cathedral was then built on the spot the dragon defeated evil in his honour, and the land is currently ruled by King Reinhardt III. Unfortunately, the evil is back. But don't worry, we can stop it. We are Jean Alfred Forrester, or John in the fan translation. Our father recently led a battalion of soldiers into the dungeon to seek the ancient dragon's power, but he's not returned, so we're going in after him. That's the entire plot. We'll meet smaller NPCs along the way with small obscure quests for us to do, but basically it's journey through 5 floors of a dungeon and find out what happened to our dad or the king. The whole game is the 5-floor dungeon, and you'll notice the cutscene ends straight into gameplay. There's no main menu, which will matter later. We start in a grey corridor. Controls and UI break down, and this will not take long. Forward, backward, left and right, strafe and look up and down are the trigger keys on the controller, L2 and R2. There's no jump, there's also no way to run or dodge. X brings up the menu, we'll look at that more later. Square uses whatever magic you have assigned. We'll start with the light needle spell. Circle interacts by opening doors, talking to NPCs or picking up objects, and triangle does your melee attack. You do not choose which melee attack you do because every weapon only has one. You'll just swing it down vertically or swing it horizontally. While weapons do have different stats for stab, slash, and crush, the animation for them is very similar. You do not start with a map. The map is an item you need to find, which is a problem because this is literally a maze. But just ahead of us we see the groundskeeper's room. Sometimes you'll see signs next to rooms. So I head into the groundskeeper's room, search a barrel, and then accidentally interact with the back wall, revealing it to be a secret fake wall. Fake walls don't disappear, but you can walk through them once you realize they're not real. And inside we find our first enemy, a skeleton. So behold, combat. So it seems even back in 1994, FromSoftware knew what they wanted to make, a brutally unforgiving RPG where the first enemy kills you. And this is actually something I grow to admire about the game. FromSoftware clearly knew the kind of game they wanted to make, but they were limited by the technology of the time. You can see in Kingsfield the tiny flickering ember that would go on to become Dark Souls, the sprout that would grow into the Erd tree of Elden Ring. A lot of the design ideas that they would go on to flesh out did start here. But it's FromSoftware. You're meant to die, right? You just respawn and try again. Well, not quite. In Kingsfield, you don't respawn. You restart. It's closer to a roguelike because you lose everything. Items, weapons, levels, spells, quest progress, keys, maps. Death in Kingsfield is a full game restart. Now, there is an item that we'll find later which does let you respawn instead of restarting, but it's a consumable item and you need to have done a quest to unlock that ability. So how do we kill the first enemy? Well, by understanding the combat system. And I am amazed how much the combat design of all FromSoftware games was built here. You can actually identify the core design ideas, the fundamentals that would go on to become iconic FromSoftware design. The UI in the top left shows your health and mana, but also your power and magic. Performing a melee attack completely drains your power bar, but that then slowly refills. You can attack again when it's refilling, but to do maximum damage with your weapon, you must wait until the bar is full. The refill speed of the bar depends on the weapon you have equipped. Small, light weapons refill quicker, heavy, long swinging weapons refill slower. So we can see this is the basis of what will become a stamina system. When you cast magic, your magic meter is completely drained and you spend some mana. You need to wait for the magic meter to refill before you can cast again. The speed this refills at is based on your magic level. When an enemy attacks you, they are animation locked into their attack. They have committed. There is a wind up, then the damage frames, then a cooldown. The range of the attack depends on the enemy, and you attack the same way. Wind up, damage frames, cooldown. There is no active blocking. If you hit an enemy at any time, you will stagger them, interrupting their attack animation. This means you can wait for them to attack, dodge backwards to avoid being hit, then rush forward and hit them while they're in their cooldown frames. You can even stop an in-progress attack by hitting an enemy in the wind-up if you're quick enough. You can even use your magic attack to interrupt an attack to stun the enemy and then dodge in and follow that up with a melee attack. But enemies mostly attack forward, so the safest way to deal with any of them is to circle strafe around them and attack them from behind, or hit them and use the stun frames to move to the side. There's no lock on, but you don't really need it. So already we've got a rudimentary stamina system doing more damage with what are essentially charged attacks, animation locks, damage frames and ranges, interrupts and staggers. Directional attacks, a separate but complementary magic system, and as we'll see later, healing spells. Secret rooms and an obscure go and find out what happened plot. It's all very FromSoftware, and it all started here. So we take the skeleton down, get some gold. There are very few shops in the game, but we actually need gold to progress this first floor. In the chest we find a shield. You just equip it, there's no block button, it's a static stat boost. So let's cover stats briefly. Every weapon has a stab, slash or crush damage number. Certain enemies are weak or resistant to certain types of attacks, but you will not notice, just use whatever you have. You have static defense numbers against the same types of attacks, but armor is so rare, the best idea is just don't get hit. The annoying thing here is the only place to see your total stats is on the status screen. You cannot see the actual stats of a weapon or bit of armor alone. Certain items even have important passive buffs or harmful debuffs, like a sword which slowly refills your mana, or another which permanently casts the dark effect onto you while wielding it. But nowhere in the game does it tell you it does these things. We find a magical well, it's currently empty, and a healing herb. The herbs are your main source of health. Later on we'll find a better version. Unfortunately, you can't assign items to quick buttons. This means you have to open the menu and use them, but you can only use one at a time, reopening every time you do so. It's janky. The game doesn't seem to have the ability to process multiple items at the same time. Some scenery can be interacted with or has basic description text, like this body just saying, "He's dead," so clearly your dad's battalion is not doing too well. The dungeon itself is very maze-like. In fact, it's like playing through the old Windows 95 maze screensaver, but everything wants to kill you. We find the first shop. The NPCs are all faceless and creepy, and interacting with them has them slowly turn to look at you, then say a few lines, then turn to look away. And you have to interact with them multiple times to actually exhaust their dialogue or start their quests. This is a design FromSoftware has continued to this day. And just like using items, you cannot purchase multiple things at once from a shop. One sale per shop interaction, so buying lots of stuff takes time. This soldier says all the others have been sent to the lower levels, so we should go and find them, and this crucifix on the wall is a save point. You can only save at crosses, and unlike bonfires or sites of grace, crosses are not always in safe places, and you cannot fast travel between them. In fact, the game has one form of fast travel, and we'll find it later. Notice how you can see into this room of skeletons, but not enter. I like this. I like sight lines. I like being able to see future challenges. I know if I go in there now I would die, but I will definitely come back here later. Because even though the dungeon has 5 floors, it's not completely linear. Have a chat with this priest and he says his golden cross is missing. Please return it to him. And this starts a quest. Now the game has no way of telling you this or reminding you what you're meant to be doing, or hinting at where the cross may be. So this is exactly as obtuse as Elden Ring in that regard. Ah, an arrow trap with poison pits to the side. Maybe let's not go this way. Oh yeah, poison is a thing because this is a FromSoftware game, so of course poison is a thing. Walking over a poison pit or being hit by a poison enemy will poison you, and this means you'll just slowly lose health. Other status effects include paralysis, which vastly reduces your moving and turning speed, and dark, which reduces your view distance. I actually really like how the dark status effect is an actual player-focused mechanical effect, not just a mana or health thing. It feels like they're really playing around with what status effects could be. Take down some spiders and then some snakes and then meet an angry watermelon plant. These things lunge at you, and if you time it well, you can hit them mid-lunge before that attack hits you. And then we find an evil tree with longer range stabby branches and a very red evil eye. I like how we've already had 2 different status effects, poison and paralysis, different enemy sizes, different enemy speeds, and different attack animation damage windows. There is more variety in the first hour of Kingsfield than all of Devil May Cry 2. And taking down the evil tree has us level up, so let's discuss levels. You gain experience by killing enemies and then you level up, which increases your total hit points and total mana, but it does not refill either of them. So a level up is not an emergency heal. Leveling up also increases your strength and magic, which means you do more damage in melee or with magic. There is also a hidden system with weapon special attacks, but that comes later. The most important thing to remember with leveling is you don't just increase strength and magic by leveling up through killing enemies. Every time you do melee damage or magic damage to an enemy, you're increasing an invisible melee or magic counter. The amount you increase it by depends on the melee or magic damage you do. Whenever either of those invisible counters reach 100, you gain a point in that stat. You'll sometimes see strength increases or magic increased appear on the screen. You're not gaining a full level, you're just gaining a level in that stat. That's what's doing this. So you get better at the style that you use more. The problem here is you're always going to be increasing your melee faster because restoring your mana is, as we'll find out in the early game, very difficult. You'll also see your class listed. This changes based on your total strength and magic added together. Remember, you cannot make any choices about what this is, you just gain levels by using either style. Fight on and find more hidden rooms, and let's just address this. Kingsfield has way too many hidden rooms, and these aren't extra areas. This is the critical path. You need to find this. Now, there is an item, the Phantom Rod, to help you find them, but you find this later in the game, and it's a limited consumable. So you'll spend a lot of time running along wall edges just mashing the interact button, hoping to find a hidden door. And remember, finding the hidden door doesn't make the actual wall disappear. It just removes collision detection from the graphic. You have to remember which walls aren't real. Time for a texture change, and this is how you navigate without a map, mostly just remembering what color area you were in before. This grave has a marking on it. The Light Family Tomb may be important later. And hey, new enemies! This must mean I've not been here before. But nope, that's the Dark Souls conditioning in me talking. Because in Kingsfield, enemies respawn. Whenever you're not in the room that they are in, they'll just come back. This is great for grinding levels and terrible if you're trying to clear a path to help with navigation. By now, I'm really wanting a map because the whole game is literally a maze, and while you do find a map in the game later, allow me to present the greatest thing about internet culture: shared knowledge. The website which originally hosted these is long down by now, but these hand-drawn maps have survived. Steam credits these to Martin Ramirez and his daughter. They document all 5 floors of the dungeon, where to find every item or save point, and which doors do or don't need keys, and they show the hidden rooms. Now, some of you hardcore old school players who beat this game solo many years ago probably see this as cheating, but believe me, playing with access to this now will save you so much time, and not actually make the experience any worse, because exploring in games is great, while being lost and frustrated is not, and Kingsfield is very much designed to make you get lost. Now, I'm all for difficulty in gameplay, but when the level layout makes finding the gameplay itself a chore, I think we can collectively agree having a map is a fair thing. We fight our way through some mummies, and the entire point of the first floor is basically find the switch which turns off the arrow traps from earlier. And hey, cool, the mummy dropped a new weapon, the Knight's Sword. Most item drops are predetermined, so you can indeed route the game for speedrunning. This tree enemy does highlight a problem, however. The combat system is simple but functional, but it does seem to be built around circle strafing enemies to get the best damage in, which you cannot do in tight corridors. And that's actually an interesting point, because Kingsfield, despite being called Kingsfield, does not actually contain any fields. There are corridors, sometimes larger open rooms, and in one section there's some steps up the side of a tower with a massive expansive drop to the side, but no fields. It's mostly a very lonely, claustrophobic game. Eventually, we find the Dragon Cup and a note on the wall saying the waters of the fountain have stopped. We should return the cup to the temple. So we've even got cryptic notes scrawled on walls, which is an iconic way of delivering information to the player used by Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and Elden Ring. The formula really was set back in 1994. Take out these 3 trees and grab some body armor. Then I find a secret room with a large locked door, a dragon carved onto it. This is clearly very important, but I can't open it now, so I'll be back later. Deeper in the cave, we stumble into a mine and meet a miner. They say they're looking for their son. This isn't a quest, it's just world building. But notice how we've had very few NPCs, a soldier, a shop, and now this guy. The world feels lonely. It feels slow and somber, ethereal. Kingsfield is a very atmospheric game. The simple textures, the music, the isolation. And as you play, you slowly build up this uncomfortable comfortableness. It's an anxious energy. NPCs aren't your friends, and you're not welcome here, but you can still survive. A note on the wall tells us we're heading to the Dragon Temple. Inside, we need to place the Dragon Cup from earlier, but you can't just interact with the plinth. You must stand in front of it, and then open your inventory and use the cup. When you do this, you'll hear running water. This is one part of the how to respawn instead of just restart questline. Take down a scorpion, avoiding its poison, and then find 3 herbs inside a barrel, but notice how the game is so simple it can't actually give you 3 herbs in one go. It must give you 1 herb 3 times. And then we find the Light Family Key. This is needed for some chests, but doesn't actually affect game progression. But close by, we find the Keeper's Map, the first of 2 in-game map items. The Keeper's Map isn't labeled, and it doesn't show secret rooms. In fact, it doesn't show several major areas of the floor, but it does show our location, so it's better than nothing for now. Do beware of pit traps on the floor, either bottomless pits that you'll fall down and die, or spike traps which rapidly drain health. And by now I'm level 6, and I do actually feel substantially stronger. The feeling of progression is decent. Small increases in defense seem to be mitigating a lot of damage, and small increases in strength do actually do a lot of damage. It's taking 2 hits instead of 5 to kill an enemy. And along with the numbers increasing, you as a player get better. You learn your weapon's range, you learn the enemy's attack timings, how much damage you can take before needing to heal. You start to play the game better, and that all-important Souls-like design mantra of skill beats stats starts to shine through. Enemies which were scary are now just minor annoyances, not because my character is better at the game, but because I am. This hole in the wall just endlessly respawns spiders, which at first seems like a problem, but what you actually have here is a level grinding spot. The only issue is when you get more than 3 or 4 enemies on screen at once, the game does start to noticeably slow down. That's not the emulator, that's the game. So to switch the arrow trap off, we need to unlock this door by the spiders, and that needs the deceased key, and to get that we need to bring the golden cross back to the priest. And where is the golden cross? Well, it turns out it's in the shop, and it costs 1,800 gold. So now it's time to grind for gold and hunt down item drops that we can sell, like this tree, which drops a battle axe, but that is a better weapon than I have, so I'm going to keep it. Sell all the extra stuff I don't need and get the cross, head back to the priest. Now, one interesting design idea is there are a few doors on this floor you can only open with a key that you get on the 4th floor. So the 5-floor dungeon idea isn't totally linear. You are rewarded for backtracking and opening up old chests. Some of the best armor in the game is actually on the 1st floor, we just can't access it yet. That's looping design. Backtracking, new routes, I love looping design. And by now, Kingsfield is legitimately impressing me. Not necessarily with what it's done, but with what it's trying to do. You can feel how ambitious the game wants to be while remaining grounded in what it could actually do. The fundamental design choices it has made are good. It's kept the scale realistic. It's not too big, it's not too complex, there's very little bloat. It wanted to be a simple dungeon crawler with combat choices, and it is. You can tell that the game design idea is not finished cooking yet. This isn't the final form that any of these design choices will take, but goddamn, the ingredients for a good game are here. We give the priest the cross, get the key, go back to the spiders, and switch off the arrow trap. Switches don't tell you what they do, but there are only about 3 in the game, so it's not hard to find what they've done. And now the question of, is it worth walking over the poison pit to pick up the items? You do have antidote herbs, but they are limited, so the answer is usually no. Head past the arrow trap, down the slope, and onto the teleporter to reach level 2. Objective here, find 5 items. The wind crystal and the earth crystal, which are needed to open the temple later, the dungeon key, which opens a couple of doors, the green dragon's staff, and a magical harp. And you know, one of the most impressive things about this game is the entire thing is 29 megabytes. Elden Ring, the PC version by comparison, is 45 gigabytes. That is 1,551 Kingsfields. On this floor we meet Eric the Knight. He says the commander, our dad, is further down in the dungeon, and then a new enemy, ghosts, with the creepiest laugh. That laugh. I hear that laugh now in my dreams. It plays when you're least expecting it. Sometimes you can't even see the enemy. Ghosts also have a load of health. They're not dangerous, providing you can get behind them and stunlock them, but they are absolute damage sponges. We've also got swinging hazards now, morning stars hanging from the ceiling, so I rush on through, steal some boots from a grave, and then get caught between a mummy and a skeleton and have to spam healing herbs to survive. Eventually I find the button which turns off the spike traps, and then find one of the game's most valuable items, the Dragon Tree Fruit. Using a Dragon Tree Fruit will instantly restore all of your health and all of your mana. In fact, it's one of the only ways to refill your mana without finding the healing room later. But the Dragon Tree Fruit has a second use. Provided that you've activated the fountain back on the 1st floor by putting the Dragon Chalice back in the temple, if you die while you have a Dragon Fruit in your inventory, the fruit will be consumed and you will respawn at the fountain on the 1st floor and not lose your progress. Yes, you'll have to remember how to travel back from the 1st floor to whatever floor you were on, but you will keep your items and experience. So your dragon fruits are essentially your lives, which means the respawn after death mechanic FromSoftware games are known for was being prototyped back in 1994. There are more arrow traps on this floor, but you'll notice you can avoid them if you time it well. Projectiles like arrows or later fireballs are actually mapped with decent hitboxes, and if you are quick enough, you can find a break in the stream of arrows to dodge through them. This can get you the first Phantom Rod. It's a consumable item which, when used, turns the world green for a while and reveals all of the hidden passages and chests, removing fake walls. So this is how you're actually meant to find them. Around the corner we find some golems, and the sound design alone, the grunts, makes this thing creepy. From 1 golem to 3. Take them all out slowly and carefully, and this gets us the Earthstone Seal, one of 4 seals we'll need to find. And just down the corridor we find the Treasury, a load of chests with better equipment. Some are locked and all are guarded by a new enemy, lizard men. The danger here is they can all shoot fireballs, and their melee attack can poison you. The room itself, though, is full of columns, so it's perfectly designed to dodge the fireballs. And this highlights another lovely mechanic. Enemies can hit and hurt other enemies, so if you can line them up, they will fireball their friends, letting you take advantage of the stagger and rush in for attacks. In a chest, we find a truth mirror. This is a fascinating item. Using it from your inventory while facing something that has a description, such as an NPC, enemy, or item, will give you a short description of that thing. So it's an in-game way of gathering lore through the descriptions of stuff. There is also a chasm here that we cannot get across, so make a mental note and come back here soon. Save points are now hidden behind fake walls, so even finding somewhere to rest safely is a challenge. On this wall we find a note saying, "I need a hand." I'm still amazed by how much design that we accept as interesting and modern is actually classic. I can also understand why audiences of the time might not have responded well to this. Kingsfield was genuinely ahead of its time. The dude is just round the corner, and if you talk to him with the dragon fruit in your inventory, you'll automatically give him the fruit in exchange for the harp. So what does the harp do? Well, stand on the edge of a chasm and play the harp from the inventory, and you'll summon a bridge to let you cross, which is pretty cool. Environmental manipulation. Unfortunately, this small section of the game, which is just 2 or 3 chasms arranged in a small maze, is the only time you need to do this, and this leads us to look at map design. Most of the floors in Kingsfield 1 are loops with a central connecting route, but snaking away from that loop, they divide into 4 or 5 main segments off to the fringes. These segments are normally not connected together, but there are a few teleporters or secret passages which do act as shortcuts. In general, though, once you've started travelling in a direction from the central loop, you'll keep going until you find the thing that direction had, a key item, a weapon, or an NPC. Then you return to the main corridor and go in another direction. Repeat until you have all the things on a floor. Now, the harp is one of only 2 items which directly interact with the environment, and it only does so at this bit, which I think is a shame, given how the looping nature of design encourages you to return to earlier sections of both the floor you're on and previous floors as a whole, bringing late-game keys or weapons to unlock new stuff. The harp is essentially a big over-designed key, but all the locks it works on are all gathered right here. It would have been really cool to see the harp used to access new areas back on earlier floors. Gee, I wonder what could be on the other side of this door. Methinks it might possibly be an enemy waiting to ambush me. This room is full of poison plants. It took me way longer than I expected to get through. I had to play super defensively because poison was just eating away at my health. Eventually, I kill all the plants and get the dungeon key. And I find more strange dragon doors. You know, FromSoftware love this design of endgame secrets hidden throughout. They did the same thing with Eternal Ring on the PS2, hiding one of the best spells right back at the start of the game in a hidden cave on the beach. But you need to have a high-level spell to unlock this cave. More looting gets us the Water Seal Stone, 2 down, 2 to go. And down here we meet a magician who will take our Mirror of Truth and in exchange teach us some healing magic. That's fine, I wasn't using the mirror anyway. Use the dungeon key to open this portcullis, kill some more trees, and level up, but as we do, we automatically learn the spell Dispoison. Some spells are gained from NPC quests, some come from interacting with items, and some are just learned when you hit level thresholds. And now for the start of the most important questline in the game. We meet an elf, who says the king has been corrupted by the dark magics of this place. They grow more powerful, and we must defeat them. Then they fly away in the best animation ever. Talking to this elf is important to trigger the questline later. Inside the chest next to them we find the green dragon rod. This is a permanent item, and using it from the inventory will teleport you to the start of whatever floor you're on, so now we have a reusable sort of fast travel. With the 2 seals found and the dragon rod now acquired, we can use the harp to summon the bridge to cross the chasm and teleport down to level 3. Objective here, find the fire and wind crystals and then use all 4 temple seals to unlock the temple and get to level 4. We now have these night enemies. I originally thought these were ice, but they shoot fireballs, so maybe they're just silver. You'll also notice that early enemies, snakes, spiders, and those plant things, had different colours on different segments of them. They were almost real. But the late game enemies are mostly just a model with a single texture over it. I'm wondering if they put a bit too much time into making the early enemy design, or they thought that a model with a single texture was more magical and creepy as you descend deeper into the dungeon, because it kind of is. Down here you'll find a teleporter back to the first floor, but be aware, taking it will drop you into the room with the 3 skeletons from earlier. It is worth it though, because now we can tank the skeletons and they drop the Crescent Axe, a major weapon upgrade. The door from this room to the rest of the first floor is still locked, however, until we find the Magician's Key. It's on this floor you discover that paralysis is an absolute pain as you have to wait for it to drop off, and then I see a zombie walk through a wall, so thanks for showing me there's a hidden wall there. Taking on this golem, ice knight, and ghost all at the same time is just a mess of sound effects. Run through this room of ghosts as it's not worth the time to kill them, reach a door to the Tower of Prayer. This tower is essentially 4 pedestals in either corner, one at the top of each set of stairs, and placing the 4 elemental seals here will lift the blockage from the central tower and give access to the 4th floor teleporter. We face more spellcasting poison enemies in tight corridors, which isn't particularly easy, and then this is the closest King's Field gets to an outside area, the open air arena to the side of this set of stairs. You know, I'm always impressed by negative space used in games, especially older games. A large open expanse of nothing is sometimes as impressive as a lot of something. I'm also noticing and appreciating that the golems have 2 attacks, punching with their left or right arms, and each one has a different speed of wind-up, damage frames, and cooldown, meaning there's variation to enemy attacks and you need to look for the telegraphs to know when it's safe to jump forward and retaliate. I stick the Earthstone onto the pedestal while we are here and then find some Verdite in a chest. This is a green consumable gem which increases your magic permanently. We reach the Royal Graveyard of Randolph the 8th and run past 3 Ice Knights to grab the Fire Seal from the chest. In this grand room full of flaming torches, I ascend the stairs and meet King Randolph himself. This is not the current king, this is the older king. He gives us some fire magic and tells us to go and defeat his brother who has become corrupted by the magic in this place. And if you're not quite following the plot, remember it's a FromSoftware game and it's possible to play them, beat them and completely enjoy them without ever actually understanding what's going on. But basically, Verdite, the land we are in, is ruled by King Reinhardt III. He's the one corrupted by this place's magical energy. His dad, Reinhardt II, was just as evil, and apparently many years ago opened a door of darkness which would give the Reinhardt family the power to rule for all eternity. So Reinhardt II, his dad, poisoned this dude, Randolph, to prevent him ever challenging the throne. But then magic brought this guy back, and to defeat the Reinhardt line, we need to find the legendary dragon sword hidden somewhere down here. And we still haven't found our dad, but let's be real, he's probably dead. Push on and more wall notes tell us to beware the blades of wind, and then the faces cannot be defeated. We grab some stone hand gloves for more armor, and a long looping corridor gets us to the dragon fruit that we could see but not reach. New enemies, crystal gargoyles. Like most high-level stuff, they have a ranged magical attack and 2 melee attacks, a claw slash and a tail spin. Both have different timings, and the tail spin can be used while you're behind them and will still hit you, so even circle strafing is now risky. Secret rooms within secret rooms within secret rooms, and we find the wind bracelet. Just Picking this weapon up is enough to teach us the Wind Cutter spell, and this will become one of our most used combat tricks. Because not only is this spell cheap, it interrupts and staggers enemies and passes through multiple enemies, so you can line enemies up, spam this very cheap spell, and keep everything stun locked. This becomes my main combat tactic. And this gets us the next seal, the Windstone. And now with all 4 seals, I'm able to return to the Tower of Prayer and activate all the pedestals. I am noticing the music for this area, however. It's not bad quality, but it's very short and very repetitive. Water seal, wind seal, and we are done. The central blocking pillar is raised up and we can journey deeper into the dungeon, grabbing a dragon fruit for our troubles along the way. This releases the lock on these double doors guarded by 2 knights, and inside we find more of the king's graveyard and a new weapon, the Kalishmard, which means short sword. It's shorter range, but the power meter recharges way faster, meaning you can stun lock enemies very easily, because the gargoyles will only stagger if you hit them with a full power bar. And I don't know it yet, but the Kalishmard is one of the best weapons in the game because of its hidden weapon magic attack. You see, a few weapons have a hidden ability. If you attack and then cast a spell at the exact moment the weapon would impact the enemy, you'll use the weapon's art, which is often a super powerful, super cheap magic spell. But nowhere in the game does it tell you this. We'll look at weapon arts more later, because weapons have a special unique magical attack is another classic FromSoftware design choice. The Kalishmard is fun until you find the Flamberge about 20 seconds later, and now we are Zwei-handing our way through the dungeon. Ascend these stairs and notice the screen flickers and cycles through colours. This is a full heal and mana restore point. It's the only one in the game and it happens every time you walk here. So this will become your favourite way to refill your mana for free. We reach the teleporter and onward to the 4th floor, and the music gets funky. The walls are made of flesh. We're in a room with 8 possible exits, each leading to a different puzzle. The golems are back, and we're doing this all to the upbeat tunes of funk and swing. What a game. The main goal of the 4th floor is to find the Magician's Key, which will unlock everything except the large hidden dragon doors, and then find the Dragon Greatsword, which will unlock those doors. So we head in, and there's a room full of swinging spike traps and golems. It's basically low poly Sen's Fortress from Dark Souls 1. And new enemies, headless knights, which leap into the air and slice down in front of you, making them hard to hit with magic. It reminds me a bit of the Dark Knight from Eternal Ring. If you're interested in the FromSoftware PlayStation 2 launch title Eternal Ring, I have covered that game before. But how about a new hazard? A magical floating boulder which just zooms around the edge of this circular room. Don't get hit by it. But the true challenge here is the golems in the center respawn almost immediately. So dodge past them and get the Magician's Map, which is the best item in the game. Remember the Keeper's Map, which had a load of stuff missing? Well, the Magician's Map is complete. It's not labeled, but we can now navigate. This dying NPC blocks access to a save point, which is extremely annoying. I know it's disrespectful to step over his dying but not quite dead body, but we've got an ancient evil to stop, dude. Just please die somewhere out the way. Tank the arrow trap damage as my health can now take it, and grab the dragon shield, then fight all the way down this long corridor and find this special looking treasure chest containing the Shadow Blade. A very powerful sword, good range, high damage, fast recharge speed, but equipping it gives you the dark status, halving your view distance. This is such a nice balance, a trade-off. Yes, you are better, but you have less time to respond to things and navigation is now harder. I hug the wall and make it past this pitfall, reach this grave of the ancient dragon hero, and here we find the Dragon Greatsword, surrounded by 14 healing herbs. Now this sword is pretty good. Having it equipped refills your mana constantly, but it's very slow to recharge and it doesn't do the most damage, so you can't really fight fast. But don't worry, we can change this. By now, I've got over 5,000 gold, but nothing to spend it on. The game has given you all the equipment and healing items you could possibly need. I fight on and pass through the 3rd giant 8-way directional room, and a wall warning says the Dark Magician's true form is a diseased monster. So, okay, beware of the 2-phase magician fight. Gotcha. Push through some more golems and find the Magician's Key. This is the important thing. And then a bit further on, I spot the magician himself shooting some fireballs at me. So I go and hit him, and oh my god, they were not kidding! He transforms into this horrible skeleton wizard with 4 arms and claws coming out of his back. Those 14 healing herbs from earlier are really coming in clutch here. A teleporter on this floor sends us back to a hidden room on the first floor. We find the Twin Dragon Ring, which passively increases our magic level. So powerful, rare rings are accessories, the staple of Dark Souls. It really did begin here. Back on the 4th floor, we can unlock the corridor and head to the teleporter. This sends us to the 5th and final floor, which instantly starts with 2 jumping headless knights. My main issue is I'm backpedaling to not die and accidentally step back onto the teleporter. So the 5th floor, objective, pretty simple. Find King Reinhardt and kill him. But there's a secret objective first. Just be aware, enemies on the 5th floor are not playing around anymore. Down here, things get taken up a notch. That demon skeleton wizard from the 4th floor, that's now just a standard enemy. And they've got a ranged magical attack, which is actually an AoE nuke and can take half your health off with 1 hit. And they can shoot this from halfway across the room. This is a dangerous room to be in. Combine that with tank crystal gargoyles and you're going to lose some health here. But I can now open those giant dragon doors I've been seeing around the place by virtue of having the dragon greatsword, and inside this hidden room we find the elf from earlier and the only dragon in the game, the essence of the original dragon hero. And as a thank you for saving her, the elf blesses our dragon greatsword and it becomes the Moonlight Greatsword. This is the start of that weapon's legacy. The Moonlight Sword has been in almost every FromSoftware game since. It's been the Moonlight Beam in Armored Core, the Holy Moonlight Sword in Bloodborne, it's in Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3, and Elden Ring. And amazingly, the overall design of the sword, the blade shape and colour, was set back here in Kingsfield in 1994. Compare this with the Elden Ring version. There's a lot of similarities. The Moonlight Sword has the same mana fill passive as the Dragon Sword, but your power bar recharges way faster, so you can attack about 3 or 4 times as fast. And now we can start the approach to the final boss. This means finding a secret room behind a false wall and being met with a line of torches leading into the darkness with fireballs flying across the great chasm. I try the harp and see if I can summon a bridge, but no, just have faith and run into the air. There's an invisible bridge underneath you. So run across, and as a reward for our faith, we can harvest a plethora of dragon fruit, ready for our inevitable death at the final boss. But a few things to do before that. Use the green dragon rod to return to the start of this floor, and then daisy chain the teleporters all the way back to the start, opening up every hidden dragon door as we go. The first floor gets us the Mist Crown, the best headgear, and the second floor gets us the Wind Guard shield, the best shield. We can even swing by the treasury room and use the magician's key to access the demon armor. The only issue is this armor prevents you from casting spells and is very quickly outclassed, making it kind of pointless. The next dragon door gets us the forest armor, a complete set of armor for the most defense, and if you're wearing this, you can't wear leg armor or hand armor. But the 4th floor gets us the feather boots, which let you walk over those small poison puddles freely. Kind of strange they give you an item at the very end of the game that you no longer need. But with everything collected, we can return to the 5th floor, take the invisible bridge to the teleporter, fight through some giant versions of snakes and the ice knights from earlier. There's no real tactics here, and with the Moonlight Sword, you'll wreck things in 3 or 4 hits anyway. Then take a few more teleporters to get to the penultimate room, 2 black textured gargoyles guarding the final corridor. These things are faster and hit harder. They also have the powerful ranged magic nuke, so keep them stunned with Wind Slice and hack away. Then head down the corridor to confront King Reinhardt. But what's this? The king's dad, Reinhardt II, is a crystal statue, transformed by his own son, and the son has become this. A horrific, twisted mass of roots and arms, joined with the dungeon itself, strung up in a distant alcove, pulsing with dark magic. Tentacles writhing out from his back, each tipped with a snake head. And 4 giant faces on the wall guarding him. And when this fight starts, oh my god, everything just happens at once. The heads close to you spit at you. The snakes lash out towards you, and he sends massive, bigger-than-you blasts of magical energy which themselves explode, and I die so fast. So we need to keep this guy stun and animation locked to prevent him from casting any of his spells. But we can't melee him. You need to use magic. In fact, the Moonlight Greatsword's magical attack is specifically designed to beat this boss, but I can't use it because each magical attack has a hidden strength and magic requirement. In this case, you need 80 in each. Sound like familiar FromSoftware design? A weapon you can equip but can't fully use until you have the stats for it? Nice. So instead, I just spam the short sword's magical needle spray attack, which turns you into a machine gun. This attack just wrecks the final boss, and had I known how good this attack was, I would have used it for the entire game since getting it. A few minutes of needle spam later, and corrupted Reinhardt goes down. We turn around and leave via the portal we arrived by, and the final cutscene plays. You are a hero. The land is safe, but it may not remain so. And after the credits roll, nothing happens. I press every button, nothing. So remember at the start I said the game didn't have a menu, and this matters. Well, this is why it matters. The opening cutscene goes straight into gameplay, and the ending cutscene goes into nothing. You just have to restart the console and reload to play more. But I wanted to be thorough, so I reloaded and spent a while grinding for 80 strength and 80 magic just to see what the Moonlight special looks like, and it looks like this. You throw a central orb of magic which explodes on contact, flanked by 2 lightning bolts either side that catch any stragglers you didn't hit. It's incredibly powerful and actually quite fun to throw around. And that is Kingsfield 1. It's a short 5-floor dungeon crawler. It's got flaws. The lazy enemy texture, the frustrating maze-like corridor design, the placement of some enemies being annoying, the obtuse quests, the fact you can't use or buy more than 1 item per transaction, and how the game has no menu. But when you look at where FromSoftware started and where they are now, you spot a lot of choices they have refined. Atmosphere. The feeling of isolation, sparse, slightly unnerving, unusual NPCs, quest lines rewarding items and weapons, combat being timing-based, a rudimentary stamina bar, damage frames, animation interrupts, staggering, even the concept of dying and respawning with your progress remaining, even if it did take a rare item in Kingsfield 1, backtracking and using keys you find later to unlock shortcuts from earlier. Rings being powerful passive buffs, stories told through descriptions, messages on walls, weapons having secret passive effects on them, hidden rooms, the map being an item you have to find to improve. Not to mention the technical achievement of only having loading screens between the floors, and this was the first PlayStation RPG. Kingsfield 1 is a short, atmospheric, rough-around-the-edges collection of good ideas. Not all of those ideas are fully realized or fleshed out, but that's partly due to the technical limitations of the time and the fact this was their first game. They were still learning. But you can tell that FromSoftware knew the type of game they wanted to make. They had a very clear vision, and over the years, they've refined that vision. They wanted to make Elden Ring. So they started with Kingsfield and slowly improved. If Elden Ring is the Erd tree, Kingsfield 1 is definitely the first single sprout emerging from the soil, the potential of all that's yet to come. And playing it now, you can feel that. There was something special here. Souls-like games start with the player being told they are no one special. The only thing they have is the ability to keep going and to never give up, to not go hollow, to rekindle the flame, to become the Elden Lord. It's not where you begin that impresses people, it's what you become. In every FromSoftware game, you start with nothing but the vision you can do better, and you end up conquering the world. Kingsfield did that. Kingsfield 1 is the furtive Pygmy, so easily forgotten. It's Ash seeking embers. It's a Tarnished of no renown. It should have put those foolish ambitions to rest, but it didn't. It knew what it could be. So to end the review, I will award Kingsfield emboldened by the flame of ambition out of 10. Cheers for watching. Another massive thank you to all the supporters on Patreon and Twitch who keep the channel alive. You can support from only £1 a month. Check the video description for links to the Patreon, Twitch, Twitter, and our Discord. And as always, remember,